I would say the number one thing women struggle with is listening to their inner authority. Human design is interesting because it gives us language for this transition. We went from a paradigm with outer authority, where we were told what to think from a survival perspective, to a paradigm of inner authority, where we need to be able to listen to our own inner guidance. And women in particular have been excessively conditioned not to do that.
Hello, and welcome to the Connect podcast. This show is all about helping you connect to your soul's calling so you can take action on it. Because the sweetest success is a blend of discovering your purpose with the inner drive to bring it to life. I'm Sheila, health coach, lifestyle entrepreneur, and mom of two, best known for my online wellness programs, mentoring, and self-love passion. Listen in for inspiring interviews, solo chats, and Q&A sessions that will move you past overwhelm towards what lights you up. Stop accepting good enough and go for your version of great in your health, business, and relationships. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to Interview Day on the podcast. Here's a bit about today's guest. Andrea Berg is a human design guide and leadership coach. She leads high achievers to become intentional, confident, and in flow so they can make the tremendous impact they're here to make. She believes that our ability to create impact in business and life is directly related to how deeply we know ourselves. Andrea's coaching provides clarity and loosens the chains of toxic systems so that you can be your true self confidently and step into your unique ability to help create a world where we all thrive. We talked about the pivot Andrea made from corporate life into her current business and the many helpful ways she leads people into more effective connections with the human design framework. Enjoy the episode. Hi, Andrea. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
You specialize in human design and you integrate it into your leadership coaching. And when I first heard this, I thought it was such an innovative way to coach people because it's very personalized to who they are and how they show up in the world. And you say that a person's impact in all they do is connected to how deeply they know themselves. I truly believe this as well. And I consider my experience and feel like there's so much truth to this. I can't wait to get into the details of what human design is and the many ways that it impacts the people who use it in their lives and businesses. But first, I'd love to share a bit about yourself. So,
Sure.
Where were you born and raised, and where are you living now?
So I was born and raised in the Southeast US, born in Charleston, South Carolina. And then we moved to Atlanta when I was about 6. So really raised in Atlanta, and was in Atlanta through university. I went to Georgia Tech, and actually became an engineer and went into kind of your typical corporate trajectory, leadership program. I did all the things: operations, sales, commercial management, quality. And became passionate about leadership development within corporate. I was working for GE for most of that career. And they did a really wonderful job of exposing me to Myers-Briggs and StrengthsFinders 2.0 and just these different ways to get to know myself and my team as I evolved into management. And I really saw the impact of how a team works together, how a leader is able to achieve really difficult tasks when they know each other so well that they can support each other in what their strengths are. So that's a bit of how I got to this line of work.
Amazing. And so you are a mom, and I'd love you to share a little bit about kind of what your family structure is like right now.
Yes. So I have a 3-year-old and I am 32 weeks pregnant with a second boy. So Arthur is a manifesting generator, which we'll talk about. And my husband and I are both projectors. So a lot of interesting dynamics that we have had the opportunity to dive into and just get to know how to support each other differently than maybe, traditional how you would approach parenting because of human design. So that's been a real gift.
Yeah, I imagine how that would have been for me starting out with my boys as well. Like once I was aware of these types of patterns in their life too. Yeah, that's interesting because I do find when it comes to parenting, we often will follow the structure of how we were raised, or if it was not, if we weren't raised in a way that was, really healthy, perhaps we want to go like the completely opposite route. And
Yeah.
so we can kind of, we're all figuring it out, but there's certainly, no matter what we do, there's little missteps along the way, and it's all lessons and learning. But it's kind of neat if there's a framework that you're working within. That's so cool.
Yeah,
So,
it's
did
really
you
helpful.
always know that you had an ability to work well with people and wanting to help them improve their lives? Were you that kid that people would come to for a listening ear and a hug?
Oh, yes, I definitely was. It's so funny. I just moved across country from San Diego back to Atlanta, which is where I grew up. And my best friend and I from high school, I mean, we've, never really lost touch, but we've been able to reconnect more in person now that I'm back. And she's often just like, well, I've always gone to you for these kinds of things. Or it's definitely part of the path of being a projector. You are just naturally that when there's an energetic match, you are that person that can support others and give them guidance or a different perspective, or, ask questions that they may not have thought of, or that sort of thing. So I've definitely felt that all along. And I think that's why I stayed in corporate for as long as I did. I mean, it ended up being almost 18 years in total. And I think it was because I really felt fulfilled in supporting people in that way. And so it's really fulfilling to be able to take that piece and now apply it differently, but still have that support aspect.
I love that. Was this always the path that you thought you wanted to take, or did you feel like a tug for something different along the way? And what was that? Like, tell us about your life before leadership coaching and then what really brought you into the space you are.
It's so interesting because I was really sold out to corporate life. I was very committed and really felt driven to drive change from within. Um, so I did not, I call myself a reluctant entrepreneur. I actually did not want to start anything. Um, and I became faced with some situations where I couldn't in integrity stay, and um, really couldn't imagine, what I would do. I had started coaching. I had like a side practice, but I didn't imagine myself doing it full time. You know how it is. Like the ego gets in the way and tells you, oh, you can't do that. So, actually, my first venture leaving corporate was a boutique business management firm, which was essentially what I was doing in corporate, but doing it for entrepreneurs, which still involved a lot of coaching. When you're leading a small company, as you know, there's ways that we end up tripping up ourselves, or just not really having the full perspective. That's one advantage that corporate gave me, is just knowing all the different ways that something can get done versus, when you don't have that experience, you kind of think up your way and you think that's the only way. So I was able to really support my clients that way. And um, as a projector, you start to see what are your gifts and what are the things that you really enjoy doing. And for me, it was really the aspect of helping people see a different perspective, helping them connect the dots in ways that they wouldn't be able to otherwise. And that was the coaching aspect. And then I had, that was maybe 30% of the job. And then 70% was keeping the business running. And even though I could do it and I did it well, it wasn't fulfilling. And so when you're putting your life force energy into so much work that is not fulfilling, you just start to get drugged down. So I had to make some pretty difficult decisions, noticing that pattern. And human design really supported me on that path. I wouldn't have had the language or the clarity without it, because we have so much conditioning around what we should be able to do and how it should work, that I toiled along within that structure way too long. But finding human design when I did in 2017, I was about 2.5 years into my entrepreneurial journey, that helped me see, oh, wait a minute, I don't have a defined sacral. I am not creating my own life force. I am not meant to be bouncing all over the place like I'm doing. And so I had to kind of face the music as to what the physical consequences of that were. So that's a little bit of how I navigated that transition and why I had to take the steps I took.
So fascinating. And so now in the work that you do, and we're going to get into, exactly what human design is for people who don't know. And in the work that you do now, what are some of the things that women you work with tend to struggle the most with? Like, what are some of the questions that keep coming up that you find they're asking, so that they can help clarify how they're feeling?
I would say the number one thing that women struggle with is listening to their inner authority. And human design is interesting because it gives us language for this transition. And some people will call it spiritual awakening. There's so many different ways to describe what we've all been experiencing in this lifetime, but it's been building over a long time, at least 3 or 4 generations. What happened is we went from a paradigm with outer authority, where we were told what to think from a survival perspective, to a paradigm of inner authority, where we need to be able to listen to our own inner guidance. And women in particular, we have been excessively conditioned not to do that. And I would say everyone has been conditioned not to do it, because
Oh, yeah.
I have male clients who struggle, but women struggle double, if not more. And the conditioning is just so strong around fitting in and acceptance
Mhm.
and not rocking the boat. And it's so interesting looking, because everybody's design is different. So you feel it differently, which leads to a little bit more isolation, a little bit more insecurity around actually owning your own authority. So that's the number one thing I see. And strategy fits right in with that. So human design really relies, from a day-to-day perspective, how you live in your design is following your strategy and authority. Um, and I would say the second problem that women face is that we have been conditioned to believe that in order to be successful, which I would say survive, because we still are in this, you know, fight or flight mode. Um, we have to initiate, we have to take the reins, we have to take the step. And the truth is, regardless of your type, there's some sort of waiting involved. And so I really find it's a beautiful way to express the feminine aspect, because human design encompasses everything. And we know, men or women, we have feminine, masculine, we all have different balances of them. And so I just love the fact that there's masculine and feminine woven into both. Um, And as we get into what human design is, I can talk a little bit more about that. So this element of waiting is a piece of what we all need to work with. And it's really how we connect in with divine timing, which is makes at the same time, we're so conditioned not to trust that. So I would say those are the two biggest problems that most women have.
That sounds really familiar. It makes a lot of sense. I can fit into those categories for sure. And, I found that so much of moving into like a healthier, more empowered version of ourselves involves challenging our belief systems. And the small amount that I know about human design has given me a lot more grace on myself about how I operate and live the way that I do, why I do the things I do. So now please give us a simple description of what exactly human design is.
Okay. So human design is a modality that weaves together astrology, the I Ching, the Vedic chakras, and the Kabbalah. So the creator, the founder of human design, this guy, Ra Uru, he actually was Canadian. And he was a student of these ancient systems and essentially find download of how they interconnect, how they have always been operating in parallel. So the I Ching, for example, is called the Book of Changes, and it's been around somewhere between 4 to 6,000 years. Astrology, very similar timeline. Kabbalah, we know it's greater than 1,000 years. We don't know exactly how long. The chakras, definitely 5 to 6,000 years, right? So you've got these ancient systems that were developed in different parts of the world that have been operating in parallel. What happens when you weave together is you just get a more profound and specific perspective on your design. So some ancient texts from the Kabbalah will talk about your star chart and how important your star chart is. There's Kabbalah has its own astrology, right? So when you bring these together, you can see just connections and energetic patterns that we didn't have language for before. It's a very new system. It wasn't founded until the 80s. So, in some ways, it's very fresh and has like this novelty about it. But at the same time, it's based on these systems that have been around for so long. So it does have a stability and just a profoundness to it because it's based on systems that are just incredibly coherent and stable. So that's the high level of what human design is. You can get your chart for any of your listeners. Mybodygraph.com. You can get your chart for free. And what I like about that particular system is you can click on the energy centers and different connections, and it'll give you just some little nuggets of information in part of the free system. And that's probably the one I recommend for anyone who's just starting, so that you can see what the themes are and then what the not self is, et cetera, and get a little bit more description.
Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know about all those different connections with the ancient texts and different modalities. And I do, my faith background is Christian background. And so when I look at like all of these other different elements, I'm just always really fascinated when I see just how accurate they are to who I am. Enneagram is another thing that people talk about, and I'm like, wow, like it's so accurate. So it's fascinating. I feel like being able to know yourself, like we talked about in the beginning, to really spend the time looking within and knowing how you operate and really what is your highest self. And often we will know what that is, but we sometimes need it to be named just to even know. It's like almost giving ourselves permission to accept who are we really, instead of, like you said, being told this is how you need to be, this is what you need to think, and like almost everyone being put into the same size box that is the same shape, and just kind of, marching to this one beat. And so I feel like it's a nice way to allow ourselves permission to get to know ourselves better. And then in that, being able to free up a lot of the stress and anxiety that can come with just trying to live in our unique way, with our unique flavor, doing the things that we're passionate about. So, what are some ways that human design can be applied to different areas of our lives?
Human design can really be applied to any area of your experience. It's about learning the way that your energy works most effectively. So, primary driver for that is your energy type. So we've talked about you're a manifesting generator. I'm a projector. There are three other types: generators, manifestors, and reflectors. And depending on your type, your energy works in a very specific way. And then there are other elements like profile and um, your authority that help kind of inform how to view what's happening in front of you. And we know that based on our perspective, the outcome changes. So when you, for example, um, are faced with a challenging situation, knowing that you can trust your sacral authority. In your case, you have a sacral authority. You can trust your body to tell you which option is going to lead to the better outcome for yourself and those around you. Um, that really applies within your family. It applies at work. It applies in just day to day navigating the things that we navigate, right? Um, it's so challenging, I think, to really kind of let that sink in sometimes because we do have this tendency to overcomplicate. However, the freedom and the lightness that you feel on the other side of that, once you start making decisions within that paradigm, you feel relief really quickly and you see a difference really quickly. Because when you are making choices that are against your design, when you're not living in your design, it kind of jacks with the whole system. So, for example, generators and manifesting generators have a magnetic aura. When you are not listening to your authority, it actually throws discharge into your aura. So the things that are meant for you cannot find you. And when you start to make decisions in alignment, it clears all that up and your magnetism, it just increases tenfold. And then all of a sudden, these things start falling in your lap. Of course, you have to use your authority to figure out if they're the right things for you, but it feels just so different. You're just in a different flow. So that's really what I work with my clients on in supporting them, not only knowing how their energy works, but reverse engineering areas that haven't worked and figure out, okay, where did I not follow my strategy or where did I not follow my authority? Or, getting into the more specifics of the chart, different channels and gates can have a specific imprint on us. So we might have a tendency to operate a certain way because of some of the gifts that we're actually using in reverse, right? So it's all back to the conditioning and programming. We can be, working with the shadow side of a certain gift, not realizing, oh, but I also have access to this other aspect and it's safe for me to use it that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to what has our lived experience been like? What have the authority figures in our life told us or modeled for us. That's huge. And then
Huge.
also what is acceptable, and, understanding like those special parts of each of us need to be let out into the light, and it's feeling safe to do that. And
Yes.
so, yeah, that's fascinating. And so as a projector, like, how does that, like, as you were talking about manifesting generators and generators, how they handle it, how does that look for like a projector, for instance? What's the difference there?
Projector strategy is waiting for the invitation. And this is a challenging one because in order to get an invitation, you have to be visible. So, how do you make yourself visible without compromising that energetic exchange that needs to happen? So, what I love about human design is there's a purpose behind everything. So, the reason projectors wait for an invitation is because our energy is what they call penetrating. Essentially, our energy deeply connects with the people that we are exchanging energy with. So whether it be one on one or one to many, um, people can feel our energy really deeply, and that can feel a little invasive. We have a lot of wisdom. And if we give that wisdom without it being invited in, it can be dangerous. Emotionally, it can hurt people because we can be very direct. So, waiting for that invitation is just making sure that there's energetic receptivity because we don't have a defined sacral, which is one of the energy centers. So, we have limited access to energy.
Ooh, that's so
So if we go
interesting.
around offering this wisdom to people that need it but may not be ready for it, it's not going to be effectively used. And we're going to be left feeling bitter, which is our not self, because our energy is meant to be used to support efficiency. That's how we're designed. I mentioned when we first got on about like high school friends. I always
Yeah.
had, different perspective, and I would offer it and they would not take my advice and get into problems. College, very similar. And so you just get to a point where it's like you bump up against a wall so many times, you're just like, I am just going to wait for you to come to me
Yeah.
because you don't want to listen. And then, going into corporate young, I started co oping when I was 19, which at the school that I went to was full time. So I was full time a semester and then full time student a semester and alternated. So I got immersed in the corporate world very young. And likewise, I had a different perspective and ideas and wasn't listened to. And so you just get to a point where you realize like I'm just wasting my energy if I keep trying to relay what needs to change here until somebody's ready. And then
Mhm.
once they're ready, they can really take in whatever innovative idea that I'm bringing forward and it can make a real difference. But if they're not ready, then I'm just spinning my wheels and I don't have the energy for this.
So what are some of the key things about the other, if you could introduce the other types as well?
So for generators and manifesting generators, it's really your strategy is waiting to respond. And what that means is you're looking for the sacral response to whatever the stimulus is. You're looking for an energizing response. You're looking for excitement. You're going to feel it different. Everybody feels it differently, but essentially it's that energetic excitement towards something and then using your authority to know whether or not that thing is for you. Um, for manifestors, it's really about um, giving yourself more rest than you think you need. Manifestors and projectors, for that matter, because we have undefined sacrals. Um, and what happens in that rest is you create space for what's called an urge. So manifestors are the initiators in the different, in the human design world. And when a manifester is acting like a generator, which you can do because let's say you're in a work setting with a team and just by knowing the probability of whose design is what, you're going to be around a bunch of generators or manifesting generators, because 70% of the population is either generator or manifesting generator. And projectors are 20%, manifestors are only 7. So likely they're the only manifestor on the team. They're taking in all the sacral energy from the people that they're around. And what happens is they amplify it. And so they're like a super generator, but they're not built for that. And what happens is they get tired and then they can't get their urges. And their urges are really how creation starts in the human design world. Like, we need them to be well rested and like knowing that they're meant to bring new ideas into the world. So the strategy for a manifestor is to inform. And that is essentially letting others around them know what this new thing is that's coming through them. And then using their authority to know which things they should take action on. And reflectors are, I think, the most interesting type. They're 1% of the population. So I've only met one reflector. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I've only met one. I have, there's like different reflector groups, and there's some famous people that I know are reflectors. But as far as readings go, I've only done one session with a reflector before. They have no defined centers. So they are essentially, their aura is like a Teflon, where they kind of like sample the energy around them and then get information, and have to really work with the lunar cycle to know where to take action, where not to take action. So that's, a challenging, it's a challenging dynamic to be in, but they are able to reflect back to all of us the results of our creations and the results of, how we're showing up and how we're living in our design. So they have just profound insight in ways that things can be improved, or what impact we're truly having. I mean, just having reflectors around is a real gift.
So who are some of these, famous people that you would know that are shown to be reflectors, out of curiosity?
So Sandra Bullock is a reflector. Teal Swan is also a reflector. She's famous in kind of the personal development, spiritual space. Those are the two that come to mind. Yeah. And we have a couple of people in Origin that are also reflectors.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, you're going to find even a small amount, they'll be in a larger group for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, well, thank you for sharing that. It's so helpful to know, just for us to kind of look around, even in our own lives, the people around us. It kind of makes you start thinking, ooh, I bet that's what they are. It's just kind of fun.
Yeah. And it's really fun when you compare notes on like what you know about the person, and then you pull their chart, because one of my mentors, she always laughs about this. She's also a projector, and she says, people look around the room and they look for the lazy person, the person who's like hanging out on the couch or whatever. She's like, actually, most often the projector is the one who's running around and cannot stop because they're stuck in the on position, which I would say is also true for the manifestor, where they're just so busy, so many things on their plate. But again, it's just that relationship with the sacral of figuring out, how to be in balance, versus someone like yourself, where you have that defined sacral and you can do all those things as long as they excite you.
Mm-hmm. I like that. I get excited about a lot of things though. So I need to make sure I have a good inner authority. That
Yes.
is something I've been honing through my life gratefully, even prior to knowing about human design. It's that truly and it really informs on my work of teaching others too, like tapping into what is it that you feel you need to do, and not looking outside of yourself, until you've got a center. So that's fascinating. So in your life, what were some belief systems or ideas about how you operate that shifted as you learned your personal design? And what kind of results did you start to see?
I think the biggest belief was this subscription to um, like make it happen culture where I was really conditioned from a very young age that it was up to me to make it happen. So I can remember um, when I was first able to work, I think I had just turned 16, and wanting to get a part time job somewhere and putting in applications, and my parents being like, you have to call and you have to follow up and you have to ask them, do they need anything else? And right. And it was just this like very deep conditioning around it's up to you to make it happen. Um, and human design has helped loosen the grip there. And really, again, back to this question of an inner authority, where I'm a splenic authority. So for me, it's a very quiet idea that just kind of drops in. So I might get an idea of like, you know, you should message this person. And it's not from a up to you to make it happen perspective, but it's an alignment for you to take this action perspective, which, you know, if you're not attuned, can be the same energy. um so in those cases I take the action, but I'm always checking in with my intuition now to make sure that it's my action to take. And very often I get a no. Very often I get a it's that's not your action. And it could be that the invitation's not there, it could be that the person's not ready, it could be any number of things. But your inner authority will let you know where you do need to make something happen, so to speak, or take action on your part, and where you need to trust divine timing and know that it's coming, and it might need to go through some iterations before it gets to you.
I find divine timing to be such an encouragement when we really tap into that, knowing that, we are here at this place right now. We're meant to be at this place right now. And we can have our hopes and our desires and know to take action towards certain things, but we don't need to feel anxious about it when we are
Yes.
trusting the divine that brought us here in the first place. And
Yes.
yeah, that's helped me so much because I did find I got very caught up in the make it happen kind of mindset. I was very steeped in that in the marketing world. And prior to that,
Mm-hmm.
just working in a very male dominated space. I mean, very conscious males overall, yet it was still that go, go, go. It's a different kind of energy. I think, like you mentioned earlier, we do work against some of the things that we were raised in as well, and just the structures in
Yes.
our society, which are very prevalent, which I'm very happy that more people are talking about now too, because we can heal together. We can work through this together and have a lot more grace on each other in the process as well.
Yes. And I love looking to nature for cues of how this works. And you and I are both big fans of Kate Northrup's work, and I feel like her description of egg wisdom is a really great reminder of how our energy works. And for those that haven't heard of egg wisdom, it is this concept of what the egg is doing while it's waiting for the sperm. And the egg is actually putting out signals, but it's not chasing the sperm. It is really just intentional and putting out a signal of what it wants and trusting that it will find her. And so when I start to feel that make it happen programming come up again, because it's in the air that we breathe.
It
It
is.
really truly is. I just try to relax into, okay, what does nature do around this? Are birds running around chasing squirrels? I mean, what's happening? And take cues from, okay, they're not. They're looking to their environment, they're being led. I can do the same thing. And
Mhm.
that always kind of allows me to come back to that more clear place.
I love nature so much. And that's why I love spending more and more time in it as often as I can. There's There's so many lessons to be learned. And I know even the biblical scriptures that I look to, there's so much of nature included in that. I mean, obviously, it was a more primitive time.
Sure.
And yet, that is one thing that has not changed. Even in concrete jungle cities, there are trees, there are parks, at least somewhere, that we can
Yes.
see nature at work. So it's beautiful. My work is centered on self care and wellness. The idea that we need to look within to do what's best for our health, our lifestyle, and our relationships. And the way we take care of ourselves really shifts through the years and even through the seasons. So, what does self care look like for you these days? And what is lighting you up the most in your life?
I love this question. Self care for me these days looks like a lot more rest than what I'm conditioned
I'm so
to
happy to hear that.
believe I need. um, it is a little bit cliche in the human design world. We talk about people with undefined sacrals needing more rest, but the truth is we do. And everybody actually needs rest.
Mhm.
Um, and I think some of my MG and generator clients are the ones who don't give it to themselves enough because they've been programmed to believe that if they don't get everything done, somebody's going to die, right? So much pressure is put on those defined sacrals to keep everything running that it wears down their inner fire. So I've really been working on embracing how much rest I need right now, which, I'm 7 months pregnant. So it's a lot. It's more than I would like.
Double the
And at
rest.
the same,
There's two of you.
yes, there's two of us. And one is like really, trying to build himself up to be able to come out. So it's a lot. I would say that's the number one thing. And and then trusting that if I rest enough, that I will have the energy I need to move my body and to feel good in my body and whatever that needs to look like right now. That's really the biggest focus.
It's so great. I'm glad that you shared that specifically for listeners because so often when we think of self-care, it's like this checklist. And it's like the more things we do for self-care, the better we are as humans
Yes.
and the more responsible we are and the healthier we are when really it is about doing less, which is the
Yes.
mantra that you and I share again from Kate
Yes.
Northrup's work. And it is something that can really give us so much more life when we do that. So, where can people find and follow you these days?
So you can follow me on Instagram. My handle is Andrea Ward Berg. I'm also on LinkedIn. Um, and then my website is just andreawardberg.com. So all three of those are great ways to get in touch. I do have a little mini course called Better Human, which takes you through just the basics of your energy type and strategy authority. And I've got some exciting things coming this fall. So I'm working on those now. So hopefully anybody who's listening that is interested, you'll get to see those as soon as they're ready.
Wonderful. You've got a lot in the works, your body and your business.
My body and my business. Yes.
Oh,
I love
well,
that.
these details are going to be linked in the show notes. And Andrea, I am so grateful for our conversation today. I'm grateful for the time we've spent chatting in the past as well. And it's giving me a lot to think about. And like I said, it gives me such a sense of ease, knowing that we can all be truly who we were designed to be and not pushing ourselves just to do life like everyone else.
Yes, I love it. And thank you for having me. This has been so fun.
For those of you listening, thanks for tuning in. How did what Andrea shared today resonate for you? Are you wondering what your human design is and wanting to learn more? Or have you been using the framework already? Andrea and I would love to know. Please share this episode and tag us over on Instagram at Sheila A. Botello and at Andrea Wardberg. So grateful you were here. Big blessings. Thank you so much for being here with me on the Connect podcast. If you like this episode, please share it with someone you think would enjoy it. Also, if you head over to iTunes to leave a review, I'd be so grateful. Let us know what your favorite parts were and what you'd like to hear more of. It will help us have a greater impact, elevating many more people to grow and succeed together. See you next time.